Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I am your host, Carl Zha. Today we have a very special guest from Beijing. Jason, I have known you for a long time. Jason Smith, for the people who don't know you, for the people, I don't know why they would know you, but for people who might not know you, Jason, could you do a very brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Jason Smith. I am a radio show host, which I think is special because I think I'm the only actual American US citizen radio show host in China. So if you turn on the radio in some cities, you're going to hear my voice, which I think is special. My podcast is called The Bridge to China. You can find us on all podcasting platforms. I recently wrote this book, and so I'm kind of studying like what China is doing with other developing countries around the world. And now I'm working on another book which is studying poverty alleviation in China. I'm very interested. I go to like small villages that used to be impoverished, and I study how they've become more prosperous. What that road has been like and how they did it. And I want to do that for other developing countries, but also because I think some of those techniques can actually be replicated back home in the States. And I think that would be cool.
Yeah, can you just read out the title of the book because
Oh,
it's backwards when you hold it up. The title
oh,
it's kind of hard to read because it's backwards. But
a
what does the
world,
title say?
sure. A world beyond poverty, China's roadmap to
Ah,
a shared future. This is, I wouldn't recommend this for people who don't like difficult books because this is like a compendium. It's like an encyclopedia of projects from around the world. It's not like a book about, oh, my experience of, no. It's just one project after another. What did China build? How much did it cost? Was it a grant? Was it a loan? What were the terms? What is China actually doing in Laos? Or what is China actually doing in Egypt? What is it? Did it actually do? Because a lot of people have weird ideas that China is debt trapping countries, and it's just not true. So I wanted to produce a book that explicitly shows what China is actually up to in a lot of these developing countries. What is it building, and what are those countries getting, and what are they giving in return?
well, the reason I invited to my show, Jason, is to provide easy, accessible information to my audience. So what
Oh, sure, yeah.
because I like to do it in the podcast form, much like you. Um, Well, I'm kind of interested. How does an American boy like you ended up in China in the first place?
Well, I got a master's degree in California, and it was in modern world history. But like most Americans, I'd never actually seen the world outside of North America, right? So I was like, okay, well, I need to go see the world if I'm going to pretend that I understand what it's like. So I moved to South Korea, and that wasn't for me. It's a great country, wonderful food, wonderful people, but I wasn't the right fit for me. And then I moved to China, and my intention at that point was I'm going to move every 2 or 3 years to a new country. And then
What
I
year
just got
was this?
this was
What?
2012 July when I moved to China,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
I fell in love with China, and then I just couldn't leave, and now now I'm just here.
You're stuck.
Yeah,
You met your wife in China?
that's right. Yeah, we met in Shandong. She's from
Mm.
Shandong, and we were immediately a couple, and we got married the next year, and now she's asleep in the bedroom. She sleeps during the
well,
day. Yeah, I don't know.
well, I must compliment on your wife's taste on the beautiful background you have.
That's right.
The
This is her.
traditional
Yeah.
Chinese, yeah, the traditional Chinese painting of cranes. That looks
Mm.
very nice. And so, okay, so how did you get into the radio business?
I that's not my was never my intention to be in media. But around 2018, 2019, we're both from the United States. So like, before 2017, China was not really even in the media. And when it was like, oh, it's polluted. And that's or pandas. And that's all you heard, right? And then 2017, 18, the US media turned just 180 on China, and everything China was bad all of a sudden. I was shocked by this, as an American living in China, because a lot of the stuff, almost all of the stuff that I saw in the media was completely false or highly inaccurate or just used a grain of truth to just talk about all these other weird accusations. And so I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I want to say why that's not true. So I started going onto social media and saying, making videos in China, actually. I was in Chinese social media at first and saying, hey, I appreciate you. I'm sorry that US is saying this stuff. And it got really popular. And then CGTN, which is a China global television news a network. And it's a huge agency here. It's the largest English speaking television channel, maybe the only real major English speaking television channel, reached out to me and said, would you like to be on TV? And I said, no. But then they were like, oh, we have radio. And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds great, because there's CGTN Radio, formerly CRI. And so actually I went to work for CRI as a radio show host, doing podcasts, the Bridge to China. And then I at that, just before then, I'd sort of switched my media to the West and gone on X and all of these other platforms. And so my social media personality on X, that's me. I couldn't get away with that if that was an official CGTN platform. A lot of people say, oh, you say this stuff because you're paid by the CGTN. No, the radio show is CGTN. But my comments on social media are my comments. So all that crazy stuff, actually, I like you referred to yourself one time 6 months ago or a year ago as a shit poster. And I thought,
I always refer to myself as shit poster.
I saw that and I thought, ooh, I like that. I want to run with that, because I want to just be able to say anything. I don't want to have to be really official and like very formal and like stick to the rules. I just wanted to just go crazy. And I thought, when I saw you post that, I thought, that's my model for how I'm going to be. And I really have just, call out BS online about China. And it's easy for me because people will say, well, China's like this. I can walk outside in Beijing and film and show that it's not like that. So it's easy for me to win a lot of these arguments because people will say, well, this is what China's like. And I can literally just go like 5 minutes downstairs and start filming and show why that's not true. And so that, that's kind of where I am.
People will say, if China is great, why don't you go live in China?
Yeah, exactly. I get that every single day.
And you're like, I'm in Beijing.
Right. Yeah. It's so strange.
Yeah.
I mean, what's really made it strange. Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
What makes it strange is that X has this new find where you are location thing. And because, we use VPNs in China, sometimes I'm in Finland, sometimes I'm in Macedonia, and it moves around. So different times when people click on my X account, they say, you're in the United States, you're lying about living in China, or you're in Macedonia, you're lying about it. There is no China option. So X does not have the technical capability to tell where people actually are. So that's been really frustrating.
Well, I'm currently based in Bali. I have been living here since the pandemic. And now some people use that as a gotcha. It's like, you're in Indonesia. Why are you talking about China? I'm like, people do travel around. Chinese people do get around. They travel around the world. I also been living in the United States for almost 30 years. And so but people just assume I'm some sort of Chinese bot, so I have to tell people I'm the latest generation Chinese AI.
Very realistic.
How's obviously you have settled in your life in Beijing. Has the kind of the downturn in the Sino-American relationship affect you in your everyday living in China?
Not really. People are still very friendly. When I got here, I was very curious as an American, what do Chinese people think of America, right? So I asked around, and at that time, 2012 to 2016, everyone was like, oh, we look up to America. We want to, develop like America. People were very open, they're my American friend. After Trump's initiated his first trade war, 2017, like people were still like, we like America, but we don't like this trade war, so people in China are really friendly. I mean, I'm sure that there are like outlier people who are really upset about it. Maybe they were exporters and it hurt them or something. But the general person on the street is very friendly to foreigners of all kinds, wherever you're from. You're from Kazakhstan, great. You're from England, great. You're from US, great. Like, so it's my daily life is really nice. People are really polite and nice to me. Nothing's really changed. Actually, I would say, if anything, what's happened is from the period 10 years ago to now, China has become safer. My own
Hmm.
thinking about this is that it's because there's a lot more prosperity. People who used to be impoverished are less likely to be impoverished today. People who made less money before make more money today. The infrastructure is great. So I think people are just because there's prosperity, because there's a lack of poverty like there used to be. I go outside and I feel safer than ever. When I first moved to China, I was like, okay, I still need to keep my guard up a little, maybe. I don't want my bike stolen. I need to lock it up like I was in the US. I didn't notice a massive difference. But today, my gosh, like I could just leave my bike in the middle of the street. People will just leave it there, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's so incredibly safe. It's incredibly safe feeling at night walking around anywhere in any city, rural, urban, doesn't matter. It's just, so I would say over the same period of time, I've actually just become more comfortable despite the trade war. Hopefully, that'll be walked back a little bit. There were some agreements made recently when President Xi and President Trump met, and I'm hoping that the relationship can get back on track a little bit, become more normalized.
Yeah, I mean that's my hope too. I'm a Chinese American. For me, I always had hope to see a better relationship between the two countries, because especially for me, that would be good for me and my family. But
Mm,
unfortunately, things hasn't turned out so
mm,
rosy for the last 8 7 8 years. But what you mentioned about the safety issue. I've seen so many videos online of like people
mm,
leaving cell phone or laptop
mm,
on a coffee table, like Starbucks in China, and then come back and it's still there. I actually experienced that myself. I was in Shanghai a couple months ago, and I left my Xiaomi phone charging in a like community center,
mm.
in a residential compound where my friend lived. And then I totally forgot. We wandered off for like 2 hours, and I'm like, "Where's my phone?" And I'm like, "Oh wait, I left it charging at a community center." We went back, the phone was still there. But
Mm,
I have to say that was not the case back in
mm.
1980s when I
Oh yeah.
I lived in China. Back then, that phone will be gone. It will be long gone. So
Mm,
I think I agree with you. I think it's part of the general prosperity. Now people are generally don't need to do that, and also there's also a lot of things also got better. General etiquette is developing. Like in 1980s, I can tell you, there's no such thing as queuing. There's no such thing as lining up. I mean, because I remember one time, just back in my days, to make a phone call to my dad who was studying for PhD in United States. We didn't have a phone in our apartment, so we actually have to travel to
wow.
downtown Chongqing to go to like a China post office or something, that where they had we can do international calls, right? So it's a whole day trip. On the way back, we have to catch a bus to go back home, and I remember it was during rush hour. The bus comes, and the whole before there was some kind of semi line, but when the bus, as soon as the bus door opened, the crowd just like swarmed the bus, and there's like some young guys like 20 something. They will climb through the open window of the bus. Yeah,
Wow.
me and my mom's like, oh, okay, my God, there's no way we could get on that bus. Let's just walk. We have to walk like several blocks to the next bus stop to catch a different bus. But that was kind of the experience in the 1980s. The, I was pleasantly surprised when I went back to China in
Mm,
2019, just before the pandemic. That's, I
mm,
think, when I first noticed about the behavior change. I was like, wow, people are actually stopping at the red light. People actually obey the signals there today. Rather than treating it as like a mere suggestion. So I think some people attribute that to the prevalence of cameras. Maybe it plays part of it, but I generally appreciate the change. I appreciate that things are getting nicer now, and safer, and very, very, very safe. People, I don't know about your experience, but from my experience in China is that I don't feel, yes, there are a lot of cameras, but I don't feel like a lot of people really care about it. They see camera as like safety, provide safety.
Yeah,
Because I
me too.
because I remember yeah, because I remember walking along trails in the Great Wall, like really kind of secluded part of Great Wall. They have cameras along the trail, and and for a lot of Chinese people, that's safety. That's like they know they will be safe even they're alone walking a trail in the wild Great Wall. Yeah, so I think that there's that. So there's just a lot of very different perceptions, because I think what it is when people talk about China, from the West in particular, a lot of times they're not really talking about China. They're talking about a projection in their mind of like their own worst fears about their own society. So rather than the real China that existed out there. I think this is sometimes it's kind of frustrating. I understand it must be frustrating for you trying to kind of convey what China is really like.
It's not just that it's frustrating, it's that it seems to be deliberate disinformation, whether it's from state actors or from individuals who are just full of hate, wherever it's coming from. There's a lot of disinformation, like the social credit score thing. This is actually outside of my home. There's a camera I noticed yesterday. It is a bunch of cameras, and one of them points straight at the road. And one of the things I read this morning when I woke up under one of my tweets was, if you jaywalk, your social credit score goes down. So I'm going to set up my camera on a tripod outside, and I'm going to walk back and forth across the street numerous times, like to show that, it doesn't affect me in any kind of way, because there is something called a social credit score. That's what's confusing. In China, they have multiple credit score systems, and one of them is called a social credit score. But actually, it's for your credit. It's like not dissimilar from a US credit system. So if you take a loan and you don't pay it, guess what? You have difficulty getting another loan. Same as the US. But if you jaywalk or post something about Winnie the Pooh online or whatever the lie is right now, nothing happens to you. I've even read people say because this person jaywalked, when they went to the store, they couldn't buy milk because they have to pay with their face. And there's so many little tiny pieces of things that are accurate that it can be confusing to someone who doesn't understand. For example, if you choose to, you can set up facial payment at a lot of stores. So you could actually pay for your groceries, but that's not what people do. People use their phone and QR codes. But the idea that something in your behavior is going to prevent you from buying food or prevent you from getting into your home is insane. It's completely ludicrous. Nothing like that exists. I could jaywalk all day long. I could probably spend 12 hours jaywalking back and forth. No credit system is going to notice that. It doesn't matter. The police won't even notice. They'll probably just think there's someone completely out of their mind if they do notice that the guy walking back and forth on the little bubble or something. Actually, I don't think anyone even watches the cameras, not even AI. And the people who have this is interesting. I want to point this out because I want full disclosure. People do have things like can't stay in a 5-star hotel, can't take high-speed rail, can't take first-class airplanes, can't have a passport to go abroad. Those people are called frauds, and they have scammed people out of millions of RMB. Maybe they haven't paid 50 employees at their factory or something. That also didn't happen by an app. It wasn't like AI made that decision. They were brought before a judge. The judge said, hey, you owe 9 million RMB to your employees that you haven't paid for 3 months. Guess what? You can't leave the country because you may have embezzled that money and hid it in the Cayman Islands. We don't want you to just go there and live a happy life. You have to stay here, and these are your limitations until you pay that debt back. And that those people you can actually also, because I've seen this, I found them on an app, all the people with low social credit scores. Yes, there are in fact apps where you can find people who are fraudulent scammers. And it's like Megan's Law in California. You're from California, right?
Yeah.
So in California, we have a law called Megan's Law. And for these people who are pedophiles, you can find them on Megan's Law in your neighborhood. So you can make sure, hey, I don't want my kids playing over there, right? So they have an app for that. In China, there is an app to find people who are fraudulent scammers, and it's to make sure that you don't go into business with them, not knowing full disclosure. This person owes 20 million RMB because they were scamming other people. But that's it. It doesn't affect normal people. Grandma, walking across the street in the wrong place or saying something to her neighbor about not liking some government policy doesn't affect anything at all. And that's one of the things I find most frustrating. People find little tiny things that are true, like, their facial recognition can be used to pay groceries, and they mix it with a pack of lies, and then they try to sell it to people like that's what China's like, when it's nothing like that. And that's really frustrating.
That's why I tell people, seeing is believing. Just come to China and see for yourself. I was traveling with a South African guy, Germs. So I just took him on a bicycle ride. We got those ride share bikes, where you scan your with Alipay QR code, and then you can rent it for like 1.5 RMB for next hour. So we were riding around Shanghai, and we're waiting at the stops. Like you see those two guys just drove their scooter without helmet, right? And like did a total illegal turn on red. You see that? Like in the West, they will think they'll be zapped or something, like, because they'll be caught on camera and social credit. But no, that still happens. Unfortunately, there's still rule breakers.
Right?
Very blatant rule breakers, and it's not. Yeah, it's that social credit dystopia stuff. There's a lot of projection. Like I said, I think there are a lot of surveillances in the West. This is what I try to tell people. Look, yeah, there are cameras in China. Yes, they're equally among. There's just as many cameras in city of London, right? And guess what? At least in China, you're safe. In London, you have all the cameras. You're still not safe. But yeah, that's the difference.
That's a really good point. A lot of people say, the reason people don't, when I post, China is one of the safest places in the world, I put statistics up. People say, that's just because there's cameras everywhere. And actually, your response that, hey, London's also filled with an insane amount of cameras, but there are stabbings and, people are robbed in broad daylight or in the subway systems. It's clearly not just because of the cameras. There's something else going on. I think it is, no offense to the UK or the United States, they are very developed countries, but in a lot of ways, it's becoming harder for their middle class in these developed countries. In the United States, people are struggling. People are living paycheck to paycheck, and rent is out. Inflation, all these things. So it actually creates criminality. That's where criminals come from. Criminals come from need, and in China, there is still need. There's still some degree of poverty in some rural areas that it needs to be corrected, and it is being corrected. But the difference is they're better off today than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And so there's a feeling of upward mobility here in China.
That is a very good point, because I have experienced that myself. I lived in China in 1980s, as I often tell people. I live in times when we need ration papers to buy everything,
right,
from cooking oil to rice to clothes. And I saw that gradually that was being phased out, and there were plenty of goods in the market you can buy as long as you have money. Whereas back in the days, you have to go line up at the designated government stores with ration papers. There used to be such a thing called friendship stores, where they will sell imported goods, foreign goods, and you cannot even buy with RMB, the Chinese money. You have to have like what they call the foreign exchange certificate, and you only get the foreign exchange certificate if you take like a hard currency, like foreign currency. You go to the People's Bank of China to trade it in for RMB, and then they give you the the foreign currency exchange certificate, and with that, then you will be able to purchase imported foreign goods. This was like 1980s. Oh, but that soon changed because come 1990s, 2000, and everything is made in China anyway. So you don't need to buy imported goods anymore unless you really want to buy like that Ferrari or Porsche or something. Yeah.
You mentioned another thing that really makes life convenient here. And a lot of people get frustrated, economists in the West, like, oh, China's inflation is, only like 0.8 if you take out electricity and food. So it's very slow. That's great. My wife, I love her to death, but she has bought, and I'm not exaggerating, something like 10 purses in the last month. Because she suddenly just went, I want all these purses. And she's ordering purses and sending them back, but keeping some of them. And the thing about it is everything's made in China. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that purse looks really expensive. How much is it? 60 RMB, which is like less than $10. And it's like something that would cost hundreds in the United States, because of tariffs and because of profiteers and middlemen and stores and whatever. So like we get amazing deals living in China. So, if you want to buy a laptop or whatever, you can get everything like way less expensive than in the West. It's one of the perks of living in China. It's just like they make so much stuff.
Yeah, everything price at least doubles when they leave China. Like I know because I just bought a Chinese EV here in Indonesia, and I know for the same brand, same spec of car in China, that car costs like a half of what I just paid. Just because tariffs and and the company could make a profit because there's less competition for other Chinese EV makers. There's not that many brands here yet. Whereas China, they have insane amount of competition, so that competition keeps the price down. And so it's great time to be a Chinese consumer today. This is another thing I wish people understand is that China, despite its very developed infrastructure, in many ways even surpassing the developed West, the price is still very affordable. Like the hotel, especially hotels, like some very nice hotels that would cost go for like $400-$500 in New York or Los Angeles. In here, you can't. It's like you go for like 10 that price, maybe like 40 to $80 you can have. I mean, it's amazing. People should just come to China. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd like I want people to come visit for a week or two, and that's going to change a lot of minds. And people who do are going to go back home with a completely different perspective. But I think living here is also really would be helpful in some cases. You mentioned cars. I was also thinking about used internal combustion engines. Used ICE cars are so cheap. So like if you want to buy like a 5-year-old Porsche in China, it costs like 10% of a new Porsche. So you go on these apps, and what's happening is they're selling as many as they can in China, and then actually they're taking all these used cars and shipping them to other countries to sell used cars in those countries because you can't sell them for any real value in China anymore because everyone's switching to EVs. So you can go online and find like a Mercedes from 5 years ago and get it for 10% of the cost of a brand new Mercedes. And so like all these people who couldn't afford cars before, like not only are they buying EVs, which are, like more than half of all of the cars in China now, but like they're also buying used ICE cars and like, oh, I have a Mercedes now, but they're like, lower middle class.
Nice. Yeah, that's really nice. I wish people really understood that, but you don't really get to experience it until you see it. Seeing is still believing. This is why I encourage anybody, just travel to China, see for yourself. Even the China haters, at least understand what you're hating. Like right now, you're just hating an abstract concept that only exists in your mind. Yeah. So
Well, you know what's really
what have
funny? The
go ahead.
haters.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just real quick. The
No, go
haters
ahead.
actually they film things that are not what they seem, and then they show it as something else. There's a very famous video that's going around right now that a lot of the people who dislike China are posting, trying to prove that there are homeless people in China. I'm sure that there are some homeless people in China, but it's very rare. But they show these videos of like people sleeping in front of the train station, right, in the 30 minutes or an hour before it opens in the morning, and they're like, proof that China has homeless people. And it's like, those people don't even look homeless. They're just like on a mat, like kind of reading their phone, like, they're right in front of a train station. Those people are clearly just waiting to get into the train station, or other examples. I'm sure you can find video of real homeless people in China, but I live in Beijing. As far as I know, and I travel around a lot, there's one guy I know of that's for sure homeless. One guy. So like, maybe there's somewhere else or something, but I ride a bike, so I see everything. I go through all kinds of different neighborhoods. There's one guy who's clearly has some kind of issue. He's completely unkempt, and he plays the erhu with a can in front of him with a QR code on it. He's the only guy I know in all of Beijing that is for sure homeless. So like, yes, maybe homelessness does exist, but it's such an outlier that's like 0.000 whatever statistical phenomenon that these people are. You go to San Francisco, and it's like homeless person, homeless person, homeless person, homeless person. It's not the same at all. So people who they're clearly just, I want people who dislike China to come to China because I think it'll change a lot of minds. But for some people, they're just going to keep making up lies no matter what.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of these lies are basically, copium and hopium, because as US is experiencing its own very serious structural problems, as some people say, US is going to decline, and as China rise, there will be a lot of people who are trying to seek comfort in trying to know, oh, China is just as bad. So like US may be bad, maybe getting worse, but China is even worse, right? That it's I think it's that kind of mentality that kind of fuels all these production of copium that we see on social media, and I think it's gonna get worse when US experiencing more problems, unfortunately. And I think the only way is for people to actually be in China, to see what it is for themselves, and then to decide for themselves, this is what is really going on here. It's a lot not for Americans yet, but it's a lot easier for Europeans nowadays. Many of these countries already have 30 days visa free to visit to China. I think most European countries now do. But unfortunately, Americans still have to go to the Chinese consulate to get a visa. But I got my 10-year multi-entry visa that's still valid until like 2029, so I'm good.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. I also want to point out that I think that I think the reason that U.S. citizens haven't been given the visa-free thing is because, the reality, you're a geopolitical analyst, is that the United States meddles in the internal affairs of other countries. If China just gave blank checks for people to come to China for 30 days and from the United States, I think the concern is that that the United States or the state government and whatever would use that as an opportunity to meddle in China. So I think the United States sort of did it to itself, made it difficult for Americans to come to China. But it's actually also easier than ever before. Like, it used to be, you have to go to the consulate to apply, and then you have to go back to the consulate to get the visa. And you also used to have to book your hotels in advance and book your plane ticket in advance. Now you don't have to do any of that. Now you can apply online. You don't need a travel itinerary. You don't need a plan. You don't need any kind of weird health check or anything. You just apply online. If you get approved, you go to the embassy one time to get your visa. So it's still easier for Americans, but it's not just like as easy for the other, dozens of countries that can just come to China whenever they want.
Yeah. But I just recommend the people who do have the visa-free privilege, take advantage of it. Why not? Just visit.
Totally.
Yeah. And China is such a huge country. It actually has a lot to offer in terms of sightseeing for a
Oh yeah.
traveler. Yeah. We're not sponsored by the Chinese tourism board, by the way. Yeah, but we're just speaking from experience because I
Yeah.
actually I'm go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. I keep on interrupting you. You're my guest. You are
No,
my
no, no.
guest.
Okay, all right, fine. I was gonna add to your point about like there's a lot to see. So you like cities, great. Go to Shenzhen, right? You want to see the robots, you want to see flying cars and all that. Go to Shenzhen. If you want to see like the desert, you can go to the Gobi Desert or the Taklamakan Desert, the Sea of Death. You know, if that's your thing. If you want a rainforest, you can go to Sichuan, which also has pandas. You know, and also the cities that light up like Christmas trees, right? They're everywhere. So whichever city you're going to, you're probably going to run into that. Qingdao, Wuhan, Changsha, Shenzhen, Shanghai, even parts of downtown Beijing are like that now. So you're going to find that wherever you go. You want to go and you want to see traditional like Chinese culture, you can go to like Xi'an, or you can go to Dali and Yunnan, or you actually want to go to Shangri-La. Guess what? It exists. I actually been doing some research on it. There's a city called Shangri-La in Yunnan. And I was like, oh, is this the real Shangri-La? So I looked at the book that's written like 1937, and there's a couple movies. And they're actually talking about a place that in the local Tibetan dialect, that's the name. It's called like the Valley of the Moon and Sun. And that's actually Shangri-La. That's the translation. And so when they changed the name from the Mandarin name to Shangri-La, it was to reflect, yes, that there is this Western obsession with this place called Shangri-La, but it was actually also the moniker of the city that in the Tibetan local dialect for the city. So it is actually Shangri-La. So if you want to go to Shangri-La, it's here. So like, I mean, there's so many different cool things to see. There's amazing little villages you can stay in, like what is it called? Huangling Village in Jiangxi. It is paradisaic. You will not want to leave. After I left, I don't think my life can ever be as satisfying knowing that that place is there and I'm not. Like there's so many places in China to see. And then you got beaches, you know, you can go to Sanya, you know, Sanya Island, and you also have that in Fujian. You also have a lot of that in Guangdong. I mean, whatever kind of food you're into, you like spicy food, Sichuan, Chongqing, where you're from. Like, there's so many amazing places in China that whatever you're into, they have it.
Yeah, people need to understand China is like US. It's a continental sized country. Has great variety and it has a lot of different cultural variations. People should just come visit. Now, having said all that, everything, I want to pick your brain a little bit. What is your outlook for the future Sino-American relationship? Now, obviously, both of us wanted to see relationship improve, but given the current trajectory, where do you see in the aftermath of Xi Trump meeting in Korea? Where do you think it's going?
This is such a complex question because I generally try not to tell the future, but I also do this to all my guests. So I have like you, all these brilliant people like Warwick Powell and other economists onto my show, and I ask them the same thing constantly.
Yeah.
What I understand and what I think is that the United States is in fact trying to provoke a regional conflict in Asia. The United States is trying to use Japan, the Philippines, and other nations near China to create the conditions for a regional conflict, which would weaken Asia and potentially continue to prop up the Western, led order that's existed for the last several centuries in under imperialism, or whatever we want to call what's going on now, neocolonialism, whatever it is. So, but I also think China is really playing the long game here. And China hasn't had a war like since 1979, a real full out war. And that was 1 month. There have been some border skirmishes here and there with India, with the Philippines and stuff, but there hasn't been a major conflict. China's really just playing it out. If China can just wait 20 more years and not have any kind of major military conflict with anyone, the West will wither away. So what we have are, I mean, not wither away, but be right-sized in the international community. Because, I mean, just look back in the 1990s. What major powers were there in the world? It was Europe, the United States, maybe Japan, That's kind of it. Those were the big boys on the chessboard. Today, it's not like that. I mean, this concept of multipolarity is real, even though they can't stop the conflict in the Middle East. With the war crimes that Israel is committing, there is still a multipolar world. I mean, Southeast Asia, ASEAN, is incredibly powerful in today's world, and Japan continues to be, although it has its own economic problems. South Korea, China, India is even starting to really rise up now. There's a lot of development in some countries in Africa, the Middle East, the Central Asia, South America. It's not the imperial-led world to some extent. So if China really wants to have the advantage, China's economy is still growing. And, everyone said, oh, China is going to grow at 4.2%. Then it was upgraded to 4.6%. Then it was upgraded to 4.8%. Now it's upgraded by Goldman Sachs, a forecast to 5%. I still think it's going to be 5.2. I've been saying that the entire year from the beginning. I'm right. And time has proven that I'm right. And every year I've been more bullish on China, and every year I've been proven correct, because China really has this ambition to grow at 4.7 GDP growth rate from 2020 to 2035, and it needs to maintain at least 5% for the next few years in order to make that happen. That's part of the Common Prosperity Campaign. When China says we're doing something, they mean that's what's going to happen. All of their 5-year plans and 10-year plans, they always come to fruition because China will, move the gears around. It's a planned economy. A lot of it is you have a free economy, you have a vibrant market economy, but you also have a planned economy working in tandem. And when China says we're going to double GDP from 2020 to 2035, GDP for the entire country by growing at 4.7% every year, that means it's going to happen. So what my point is, in this context, the fact that China is growing at 5%, maybe more this year, and probably at least 4.7 or 4.8, I think it's going to be more like 4.9 next year, means that the United States economy is still only growing at about around 2%. So China is growing at more than double the United States, and a lot of other Western allies of the United States and Eastern allies are in decline, and their actual economies are contracting or close to contracting, are barely growing at all, and they're financialized. So that really means it probably is contracting in their real economies. So if China wants to, rejoin all of its provinces, it would be much easier to do that through diplomacy and waiting. Because if a regional conflict occurs, the United States' goal will be to use a Ukraine-like situation to destroy not just China, but all of its allies over here too. The United States isn't thinking like, hey, we're going to back you, Japan. You're going to be more powerful. The United States really, and the realpolitik secret circles, are thinking, we'll use Japan and China to destroy each other, and then we'll be able to walk through and take over everything in Asia. So this is not in the interest of Japan. It's not in the interest of the Philippines. It's not in the interest of China. All the region has to do, the most prosperous region, the most peaceful region in the world, and has been for decades, is stay peaceful for the next decade or two. And all of the European powers in the United States will just become less relevant. And I think that is the play that they should go. But what's going to happen? I can't answer that question. What options are on the table? Can there be a major conflict? The United States might try to create false flags and all of these situations to create conflict. So it's possible that could happen. But really, all China needs to do is what it's doing now. Just sit back and watch the West slowly become less relevant. So, I mean, no one can tell the future, but you can see what's on the table, what might happen.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The time is on China's side. China can afford to wait out U.S. Given the U.S. current trajectory, it's besetted by a lot of domestic problems, and I think we are slowly, finally reaching a boiling point. Like maybe not boiling over yet, but we're getting there. You have seen. Even in Trump's own support base, MAGA is essentially having a civil war right now. So China just need to do what China does best, which is to grow its own prosperity. By doing so, China's relative strength will strengthen year after year vis-a-vis United States. And so far, I think China is on the right path. I don't think China will be very easily baited into a war in East Asia, because China Chinese leadership, they're not stupid, right? They understand what the intentions of the Washington is, and they have been, um, and they have a long tradition of strategic heritage that they thousands of years they have they have seen the playbook. They so I'm not too worried about a major war breaking out in East Asia, at least in the immediate future. In 20 years, who knows? But I think for next 5-10 years, I think we're just going to witnessing more of the same, which is the steady progress of China itself, a more regional integration. China with particularly with ASEAN countries, as a regional supply chain getting further integrated, um, you know, tied anchored with the Chinese market in the middle. I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, this is the whole point of China building the Belt and Road project, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's to build global connectivity points, but all these connected points all connects to China, and it makes China the center of this new network power. This is something that U.S. has been trying to sabotage, but with without much success, because ultimately China is bringing money to the table, and US is not offering the alternatives. Like the US is
Mhm.
like, okay, the best I can do is military bases and some Typhoon missiles. And but countries globally needs development and infrastructure much more. So China is winning on that front. So I agree with your assessment. And what? But back to the China U.S. China relationship though. Like, do you think there could be a return, quote unquote, to normalcy sometimes in the future?
I have to think. I have to say, I used to be less optimistic than I am now. There's a
Mhm.
man teaches at Princeton University, assistant professor. His name is Kyle Chan. And the fact that he even works at the Rand Corporation gives me hope, because this man, he really wants, yeah, just the fact that he works there at all makes me think, oh, there are sane people in the echo chamber. Like Mitch Presnick teaches at Harvard and Kyle Chan teaches at Princeton University. And there's a few other, sane people in the United States who are in positions to influence policy. Unfortunately, none of them are in politics. These are real academic people. They're just studying the numbers and the economy and how it can work. There, no offense, I'm not trying to insult them. I'm trying to compliment them. They are nerds. So they're
Mhm.
just people who are erudite and read a lot and study a lot. And they're like, this is the best possible future. Let's go that direction. And both of these gentlemen and other people like them want to see better economic integration, which would be advantageous to the United States. For example, there is a factory in Ohio that was created with a Chinese company called Longyi, and I can't remember the American name of the company, but they make solar panels, and they hired U.S. workers using Chinese technology with Chinese and American investment and a joint venture to make solar by Americans in America for America. And that is the kind of thing that the United States could benefit from. What I actually really think this. I'm just saying hope optimistically. We could see greater economic integration, and there's some point, Japanese factories came to the United States, and it was great for the United States. It created a lot of jobs, and we're at the point where Chinese technology is the best in the world. And I know there are people who disagree with that. They're wrong. So if we could get Chinese technology built in America by Americans for America, that would be advantageous for the United States, because it's not just buying products made in China, which is also advantageous for the United States because cheap goods. So actually there are a lot of ways that the United States and China complement one another. The United States is a highly financialized institution, and the dollar remains preeminent for now. So as long as the United States wants to continue to buy products from China, it can. And that's to the advantage of US consumers. And building factories in the United States isn't working without China. But guess what? If China came in, China are the world experts on how to build factories. So like we could build factories. I mean, if it's about like, oh, we don't want them to own land, or oh, we don't want them too close to a US base, fine. Why can't we have special economic zones? That's what we should have. We should have 2 or 3 special economic zones near ports in the United States, not just for China, for any companies around the world who want to come and hire American workers to make things in America for America, or even for export. I guarantee you Chinese companies would line up for that. There would be tons of investment. We'd be talking about tens of billions of dollars being poured into the United States year after year, year after year after year to build in the United States and hire American workers. You know, so there are these voices who say things like this. I hope that's what happens. But unfortunately, America is a game of political football, and whoever's making the decisions isn't making the decisions for very long. And so I don't know what the United States is going to do. Are Trump and Xi in April, when they meet in China, going to make a better deal? I think so. My own feeling is that Trump is the kind of person who wants to be a winner. And that's how he sees himself. He sees himself as a winner. And if he can sit down, the 2 most powerful leaders in the world can sit down and make a deal that's advantageous for both countries. Trump wants to walk out of China saying, oh, my best friend, President Xi, and I just made this great deal. It's going to be great for America. And it can't just be on paper. He needs a win because the trade war has been going so badly for the United States. So if Trump could walk out of Beijing with a deal that helps America, I think he wants to do that. So hopefully Bessent is setting the situation up for that. Unfortunately, you have people like Rubio who are in the administration, and they are very hawkish on China. So it's a mixed bag, really.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. will change its trajectory easily. I mean, I agree with you. There is a little bit vibe shift already. You are seeing some part of the elite are starting to recognize that China is a peer that cannot be pushed around anymore. And I think that maybe it will take a whole generation for United States to go through the whatever it needs to go through to resolve its own domestic problems, because a lot of these blaming China, anti-China stuff come from ultimately the US's own weakness, the domestic structural problems, the real structural problem that's affecting US economy. And I think as long as these won't be resolved, there will always be tensions in the U.S.-China relationship. And I expect it may take a whole generation to fix the United States. Like this is a long-term project. It's not going to be done in next 4 years or 5 years or even 10 years. This could easily be like a 25-year, 30, 40-year project to fix United States. And so if that does happen, I think there could be, U.S. and China can be back on right footing, so to speak, to have a normal relationship between normal countries. One of the problem is, I think U.S. is not a normal country right now. It needs to cure of its sickness, and once that happens, you can deal with China on a more confident place. A lot of these anger, anxiety, and fear is really derived from ultimately the American weakness. I think once that thing is going to resolve, I think 2 countries will be fine. So I unfortunately, I think China is the rational player here, and China has been playing this game very patiently, just continue to grow its own strength. China is not seeking to replace United States as a global hegemon, as many people fear. China just want to build a better China, be the best China that China can be. And I think that's a lesson that United States could learn from China. If US just invest on itself focus on
Mm.
its internal development, you will be in a much healthier place. And if you really US really want to compete with China, it needs to fix itself. It needs to look internally, not looking to try to handicap China's progress, like the Tanya Harden approach of kneecapping your competitor, but really focus on your own skills sets to develop invest in your own human capital, and then there will be more an equal chance. But uh you require people to take the long approach, the long term approach. Unfortunately, one of the problem in the U.S. is like everything is kind of very short term oriented, right? It's all about quarterly earning reports and the next election cycle. So that's one of
Mm.
the things that needs to be ironed out as well. So I expect this to be a long-term generational project to fix US. I think once that's done, US and China can have a healthy, normal relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I also think that, the UK was formerly the world power. The United States became the world power following that cycle. And what's really interesting is that about the UK was special in that it was sort of like, oh, you're going to be the new real world power. You're my best buddy. And I think that was an interesting strategy. I think the United States has an interesting opportunity to see if, it's obvious to anyone who actually knows the facts, not the people who are just making stuff up and lying about the reality of the situation, that China is going to be the major economy for the next century. So if the United States really wants to benefit in, the short, mid, and long term, hitching its boat to the China is actually a really good idea.
I hope from your words to the God's mouth. I hope some people in Washington can finally get come to their senses. Maybe if anybody's watching our show, make sure people take Jason's words to the relevant people. But really, I think I 100% agree with you. Well, this has been a
You're
fascinating. Go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
say it's really interesting that the United States has chosen this really bizarre framework because I think this has to do with game theory. Honestly, I think I'm going to blame game theory. Like the whole idea in the West is that everything is a game, everyone wants to win, and these are the objectives. And I think that, John Mearsheimer argument that has been going
That's a
around.
John Mearsheimer
Right.
argument. Yeah.
Right. The John Mearsheimer, China wants to rule the world because everyone wants to rule the world. This is not a Tears for Fears song, guys. This is the world. China has 1,000 years. Jeffrey Sachs just pointed out China has 1,000 years of not invading its neighbors. 10 centuries of not invading its neighbors. And then, actually, China is actually an introvert for a lot of that. It's like, we don't even want to trade with you. When the trade ambassador showed up to China, China was like, we're just not into that right now. Like, we're doing our own thing. China is not eager to take over the world. China, like you said, wants to develop itself and make itself very prosperous. That's its goal. That is its goal. So what we need to do is rethink in DC and, and Langley. What is China's goal? China's goal is not world domination. China's goal is to become the most, prosperous version of itself that it can be and fulfill, thousands of years of that goal of having everyone be really prosperous and successful. And the idea that the United States is surrounding China with all these bases and China's going to break out any moment is kind of crazy, really. It's like, the bully at school is like, that kid is working out. They're going to become the next bully. Everyone, we're going to form a gang and surround them, and they're just working out. It's like, just because they're working out doesn't mean they want to fight. Like, it's really kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think maybe hopefully they can get into their heads that United States does not have to be a global hegemon to be a successful country, because US is very secure. It has two oceans as its borders.
Mm.
It's not facing any imminent invasions threat from anyone, and so it can afford to develop itself. And like as this example that you gave, UK, it gave up its empire, but the British people are living far better today than they were under the British
Mhm.
imperial days.
That's a
That
really
can
good point.
still happen. That can still happen for Americans. It's still a real possibility for United States. It just requires you to give up this kind of zero sum mindset and this kind of the world domination mental bug. But that will take time. That will take time. So hopefully we'll still be around to witness that change. But I really enjoy having this conversation with you, Jason.
Likewise.
We could talk about this for hours. But anyways, this is an ongoing story. It's still evolving, and we'll probably I would like to invite you back in the future. Probably before the Xi Trump visit in Beijing, and just to kind of geek out on this, because U.S.-China relationship really is the most important bilateral relationship in the world right now, and for the future. So it's and this is, I can geek out on this for hours, but
Mm.
it's been fun. For people who want to
Mm.
follow you, Jason, where would they go?
Well, if you're on X, it's Shangguan Jiewan. That's going to be difficult to find
Yeah.
or to spell if you're American. But if you just want to find my podcast, you can find the Bridge to China podcast. And if type in the Bridge to China podcast in Google, will pop right up.
That's a great name, by the way. And thank you for making the time to be on
Thank
my
you, Carl.
show.
We'd love to have you back on our podcast too. So we'll be reaching out as
Oh,
well.
anytime. I love to talk, man. If you did notice. So for people who've been watching the show, thank you for tuning in. Until next time. Bye bye.